Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished tending to his spiritual herb garden. The morning sun cast long shadows across his remote homestead on the frontier planet of Kepler 442b. 3 years had passed since he'd left the crowded cultivation sects of Earth behind, seeking solitude to advance his martial arts without the politics and backstabbing that plagued the major schools. His homestead sat nestled in a valley, surrounded by towering crystal formations that naturally concentrated spiritual energy. It was perfect for cultivation, but more importantly, it was isolated. The nearest human settlement was over 200 kilometers away, and alien contact was practically non-existent in this sector. Marcus had built everything himself using both traditional construction methods and his earth manipulation techniques. His modest wooden house overlooked terraced gardens where he grew rare spiritual plants that would have cost fortunes back on Earth. Morning glory lotus that bloomed only under twin suns, meridian moss that absorbed cosmic radiation, and his prized possession, a small grove of phoenix fruit trees that took decades to mature. As he walked between the rows of glowing blue starlight vegetables, Marcus heard something that made him freeze. It was a sound he'd never heard before on this world, a weak, plaintive cry that seemed to come from the forest beyond his property line. The sound was high-pitched and desperate, like a kitten mewing, but there were no cats on Kepler 442b. Marcus approached the edge of his property cautiously. The forest here was dense with native vegetation, tall purple trees with silver leaves that chimed softly in the wind, and thick undergrowth of bioluminescent ferns. The crying sound came again, weaker this time, from somewhere in the tangled roots of a massive ancient tree. Pushing aside the glowing ferns, Marcus discovered the source of the sound. Huddled in a hollow between the tree roots was a creature unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was roughly the size of a house cat, with scales that shifted between deep emerald and midnight blue. 4 legs ended in tiny claws, and 2 small wings were folded against its back. Most remarkably, it had an elongated neck and a head that was unmistakably draconic, with large golden eyes that looked up at him with desperate intelligence. The creature was clearly starving. Its scales were dull and patchy, and Marcus could see its ribs through the thin membrane of its wings. When it tried to lift its head toward him, it trembled with exhaustion. "Well, hello there, little one," Marcus said softly, crouching down. He'd studied xenobiology as part of his general education, and while he'd never seen anything like this creature, its distress was obvious across species barriers. The baby dragon, for that's clearly what it was, let out another weak cry and tried to crawl toward him. Marcus noticed that one of its hind legs appeared to be injured, probably from a fall. Looking up through the canopy, he could see broken branches high above, suggesting the creature had tumbled down from somewhere in the treetops. Marcus's first instinct was caution. Unknown alien species could be dangerous, could carry diseases, or could have protective parents nearby looking for their offspring. But as he watched the creature struggle just to keep its head up, his humanitarian instincts took over. "Okay, little guy, let's get you somewhere safe first," Marcus murmured. He slowly reached out, giving the creature time to react if it was afraid. Instead, it actually crawled closer to his hand, making soft, chittering sounds. Carefully, Marcus scooped the baby dragon into his arms. It was lighter than he'd expected, probably due to its weakened state. The creature immediately curled up against his chest, seeking warmth, and Marcus could feel its rapid heartbeat through its scales. Back at his homestead, Marcus set up a makeshift nest in his workshop, using soft cloth and a heating element to keep the creature warm. The baby dragon seemed to relax once it was comfortable, but it was clearly in need of food. The question was what to feed it. Marcus had provisions for himself and nutrients for his plants, but feeding an unknown alien species was risky. Too much of the wrong thing could kill it just as surely as starvation. He started with water, offering small drops from his finger. The creature lapped them up eagerly, its rough little tongue surprisingly warm. Encouraged, Marcus tried offering small pieces of various foods from his stores. The dragon showed no interest in his preserved meats or dried fruits. It turned away from the synthetic protein bars he kept for emergencies. But when Marcus offered a small piece of phoenix fruit, one of his most precious cultivated plants, the creature's eyes lit up immediately. The phoenix fruit was special. It contained concentrated spiritual energy that helped human cultivators advance their internal power. Each fruit took months to ripen and was worth more than most people's yearly income. Marcus had been saving his small harvest for a breakthrough he'd been working toward for 2 years. But seeing how the baby dragon perked up at the scent of the fruit, Marcus didn't hesitate. He broke off a small piece and offered it. The creature devoured it greedily, making happy chittering sounds as it ate. Over the next several hours, Marcus hand-fed the baby dragon small pieces of phoenix fruit, along with water and some of his other spiritual plants. The creature's improvement was remarkable. Its scales began to regain their luster, and it became more active and alert. As evening approached, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He gathered all of his phoenix fruits, 7 precious orbs that represented months of careful cultivation, and created a nutrient paste using his food processor. The paste glowed with concentrated spiritual energy. "This should help you get your strength back," Marcus told the dragon as he offered the glowing mixture. The creature looked up at him with what seemed like gratitude before diving into the meal. As the baby dragon ate, Marcus noticed something strange happening. The air around the creature began to shimmer slightly, and he could feel the spiritual energy in his homestead being drawn toward it. The effect was subtle but unmistakable to someone trained in energy manipulation. By the time the dragon finished eating, night had fallen. Marcus prepared to move the creature inside for the night, but as he reached toward it, something extraordinary happened. The baby dragon's scales suddenly blazed with brilliant light, and waves of pure spiritual energy pulsed outward from its small body. The energy washed over Marcus's entire homestead. Every plant in his garden began to glow more brightly. The phoenix fruit trees, which had been dormant for the season, suddenly burst into bloom. Flowers that normally took years to develop appeared overnight on his rare herbs. But most shocking of all was what Marcus felt within his own body. The spiritual energy that had been stagnant in his meridians for months suddenly began to flow freely. Blockages that had frustrated his advancement for years dissolved instantly. In a matter of seconds, he achieved the breakthrough that had eluded him for so long. The baby dragon looked up at him and chirped happily, as if it had done nothing more remarkable than finish a meal. Its golden eyes sparkled with intelligence, and Marcus realized that this was no ordinary creature. The legends he'd heard of dragons in human mythology suddenly seemed far less fantastical. As the immediate effects of the energy pulse faded, Marcus sat down heavily on his workshop stool. He'd just sacrificed his entire phoenix fruit harvest to feed a lost alien creature, and somehow that creature had repaid him 100-fold. The spiritual advancement he'd just experienced would have taken him years to achieve through normal cultivation. "What are you, little one?" Marcus asked softly. The dragon tilted its head and made a soft, almost musical sound. Then, to Marcus's amazement, it climbed carefully onto his shoulder and settled there, wrapping its tail around his arm like a living bracelet. As Marcus prepared for bed that night with his unexpected guest perched on his shoulder, he had no idea that his act of kindness had been observed. High in the orbit of Kepler 442b, a massive alien vessel had detected the unique energy signature released by the baby dragon's grateful response. On the bridge of that ship, beings of incredible power were making decisions that would soon turn Marcus's quiet homestead into the most important location in the galaxy. The baby he'd rescued wasn't just any dragon. It was heir to one of the most ancient and powerful species in the known universe, and they were coming to reclaim their lost prince. The next morning, Marcus woke to find the baby dragon curled up on his chest, purring softly like a contented cat. During the night, the creature had grown slightly, and its scales now shimmered with healthy iridescence. The injured leg seemed completely healed. "Good morning, little prince," Marcus said softly, gently stroking the dragon's neck. The creature opened one golden eye, chirped happily, and stretched like a cat before settling back down. Marcus had named the dragon Stellar, after the way its scales caught the light like distant stars. It seemed fitting for a creature that had literally transformed his spiritual cultivation overnight. As they went through their morning routine, Marcus noticed that Stellar seemed remarkably intelligent. The dragon watched everything Marcus did with intense curiosity, almost as if it were studying human behavior. When Marcus prepared breakfast, Stellar observed the entire process, its head tilted in concentration. The dragon had also developed quite an appetite. After finishing another meal of spiritual fruits, Stellar began exploring the homestead with increasing confidence. It could now fly short distances, though it seemed to prefer riding on Marcus's shoulder or following him around on foot like a devoted pet. Marcus was working in his garden when the first ship appeared. It materialized out of nowhere, shimmering into visibility like a mirage becoming real. The vessel was massive, easily 2 kilometers long, and shaped like a crystalline spear that caught and refracted sunlight into rainbow patterns. Its hull seemed to be made of the same crystal formations that dotted the planet's surface, but perfectly refined and shaped. Stellar, who had been contentedly munching on some starlight vegetables, suddenly went rigid. The dragon's head snapped up, staring at the ship with wide eyes. A complex series of emotions seemed to play across its draconic features: recognition, fear, and something that might have been resignation. Marcus felt his stomach drop. After years of peaceful isolation, he'd known this moment might come. The dragon obviously belonged to someone, and that someone had clearly come looking. The ship descended slowly, settling into the valley with surprising grace for something so large. As it touched down, the ground itself seemed to welcome it, grass and flowers springing up around its crystalline landing struts. A section of the ship's hull flowed like liquid, creating an opening. What emerged made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. They were dragons, but unlike anything from human mythology. These were beings of impossible beauty and power, each one standing roughly 10 feet tall in their humanoid forms. Their scales ranged from deep space black to brilliant gold, and their eyes held the weight of millennia. Wings that could span aircraft carriers were folded elegantly against their backs, and the air around them shimmered with barely contained energy. At the head of the group walked a dragon, whose presence made the air itself seem to bow. Her scales were deep crimson with veins of gold, and a crown of crystalline horns adorned her head. Power radiated from her like heat from a forge, and Marcus realized he was looking at royalty of the highest order. Stellar let out a small, nervous chirp and tried to hide behind Marcus's leg. The Dragon Queen, for that's obviously what she was, approached with measured steps. When she was still 50 meters away, she stopped and spoke. Her voice carried perfectly across the distance, melodious and commanding. "Human," she said in perfect galactic standard, "you have our offspring." Marcus had prepared for this moment during the sleepless hours of the night. He'd thought through various scenarios, planned different responses. But standing before this being of obvious immense power, with little Stellar trembling against his leg, only one response felt right. "Yes," Marcus replied simply. "I found him injured and starving. I've been caring for him." The Queen's golden eyes narrowed slightly. "Our scanners detected the energy signature of a royal awakening from this location. That is impossible unless..." She paused, studying Marcus with new intensity. "What did you feed our prince?" Marcus straightened his shoulders. He'd given away his most precious possessions to save a dying creature, and he wasn't going to apologize for it. "Phoenix fruit and other spiritual plants from my garden," he said. "The little guy was half dead from hunger. I gave him what I had." A murmur went through the assembled dragons. Several of them exchanged glances that Marcus couldn't interpret. The queen's expression became unreadable. "Phoenix fruit," she repeated slowly. "Do you understand what phoenix fruit is to our kind, human?" Marcus shook his head. He'd assumed it was just another spiritual plant. Valuable for cultivation, but nothing more. The queen gestured, and one of her companions stepped forward. This dragon's scales were a deep blue-green, and his bearing suggested someone of high rank. "Phoenix fruit is the traditional food of dragon royalty," the second dragon explained. "It is so rare and precious that most of our kind will never taste it. To freely give such treasures to a stranger—" He paused, seeming to struggle with the concept. "It is unheard of." Stellar chose that moment to poke his head out from behind Marcus's leg. The baby dragon looked at his mother, for the resemblance was now obvious, and let out a series of complex chirps and whistles. The queen's stern expression softened slightly as she listened to her offspring. Then Stellar did something that surprised everyone present. Instead of running to his mother, the baby dragon climbed up Marcus's leg and perched on his shoulder, wrapping his tail around Marcus's arm in a clearly protective gesture. More chirping and whistling followed, with Stellar gesturing toward Marcus and the homestead with his tiny claws. The queen listened intently, her expression growing more thoughtful with each sound. "Our prince tells an interesting story," she said finally. "He says you not only fed him but stayed awake all night to ensure he was warm and safe. He says you spoke gently to him when he was afraid, and that you shared your most precious possessions without hesitation." Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment. Anyone would have done the same thing. "No," the queen said firmly. "They would not. In fact, our investigations of this sector show that your own species has established 13 colonies within 50 light years of this world. All of them were contacted during our search. Not one offered aid when we explained we were seeking a lost royal offspring. Several demanded payment for information. 2 attempted to capture our scouts." The weight of that information settled heavily on Marcus's shoulders. He thought of the human colonies he'd avoided, full of corporate miners and opportunistic settlers. The queen was probably right about their likely responses. "Our prince has also done something unprecedented," the queen continued. "He has shared his royal awakening with you. This is a gift that can only be given once in a dragon's lifetime, and only to someone they trust completely." Marcus touched his chest, where he could still feel the enhanced spiritual energy flowing through his meridians. "I didn't ask for anything in return." "Which is precisely why you received it," the blue-green dragon interjected. "Royal awakenings can only be triggered by genuine altruism. Your complete lack of expectation for reward made the gift possible." The queen stepped closer, and Marcus felt the full weight of her ancient power. But instead of threat, he sensed something else: respect and perhaps curiosity. "You intrigue me, Marcus Chen of Earth," she said, and Marcus realized he'd never told her his name. "Our prince has claimed you as family. This is his right as royal heir, but it creates complications." "What kind of complications?" The queen gestured toward the sky, where more ships were beginning to appear. These were smaller vessels, but their designs were clearly from different species. Marcus counted at least 12 distinct architectural styles. "Word has spread that a human triggered a royal awakening. This has never happened before with any alien species. Representatives from the Galactic Council are arriving to witness this unprecedented event." Stellar chirped something urgently, and the queen nodded. "Our prince wishes to remain with you," she said. "He believes you are his soul-bonded guardian, a concept from our oldest traditions that we thought was merely mythology." Marcus looked down at the baby dragon, who was gazing up at him with absolute trust. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming. "What does that mean?" "It means," the queen said with a slight smile that revealed teeth like polished daggers, "that the fate of our species may now be intertwined with yours. And given the interest this has generated among the galactic powers, your quiet little homestead is about to become the most diplomatically significant location in this sector of space." As if to underscore her words, the sky began filling with ships of every conceivable design. Marcus realized that his simple act of kindness had just thrust him into the center of galactic politics. Stellar chirped contentedly and nuzzled against Marcus's neck, completely unconcerned by the massive implications of his choice. To the baby dragon, the only thing that mattered was that his human had kept him safe. Marcus just hoped he could continue to do so in the chaos that was about to unfold. Within hours, Marcus's peaceful valley had transformed into the most secure diplomatic zone in the galaxy. Ships from dozens of species hung in the sky like metallic clouds, each one representing civilizations that had existed for millennia before humans had even discovered fire. The dragons had taken charge of security with ruthless efficiency. The queen, who had introduced herself as Empress Aurelith, sovereign of the Crystal Throne, had declared the valley a protected royal sanctuary. Any ship attempting unauthorized approach would be dealt with permanently. Marcus found himself at the center of a situation that would have been beyond his wildest imagination just days earlier. The biggest names in galactic politics were requesting audiences with him, not because of who he was, but because of what he'd done for a starving baby dragon. "The Etherian Collective offers a full terraforming contract for any world of your choosing," announced Ambassador Thessarian, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline humanoid form. "In exchange for a detailed report on the royal awakening process." Marcus sat on his own porch, feeling surreal as he listened to offers that could reshape human civilization. Stellar was curled in his lap, occasionally chirping commentary that made Empress Aurelith smile with obvious maternal pride. "The Vorthan Empire would grant your species immediate Class 7 membership in the Galactic Council," added High Commander Zex, whose insectoid features remained perfectly stoic. "We have observed that humans show remarkable potential for interspecies bonding." More offers followed. Advanced technology, territorial rights, trade agreements that would catapult humanity into the ranks of major galactic powers. Every representative seemed to have a different theory about what made humans special, and they all wanted to study the phenomenon. Marcus listened politely but said nothing. He'd already made his decision, and it had nothing to do with politics or profit. Finally, the most imposing figure stepped forward. Chancellor Nexus of the Galactic Council was an ancient being whose species had been shepherding galactic civilization for over 1,000,000 years. His appearance defied easy description, partly crystalline, partly organic, with features that seemed to shift based on the observer's expectations. "Marcus Chen," Chancellor Nexus spoke with a voice like distant thunder. "You have created a situation unprecedented in galactic history. A royal dragon awakening shared across species lines. The implications are staggering." Marcus stood up, gently cradling Stellar, who made a small protective hiss at the Chancellor. "With respect, sir, I don't think the implications are that complicated." A murmur went through the assembled delegates. No one spoke to Chancellor Nexus so casually. "Oh?" The ancient being's attention focused on Marcus with laser intensity. "Please, enlighten us." Marcus took a deep breath. He'd been thinking about this all day, watching politicians and powermongers circle around a simple act of compassion like vultures around a carcass. Every species here has offered me something in exchange for information about what happened, Marcus said. But you're all missing the point. I didn't get a royal awakening because I'm human. I got it because when I found a scared, hungry baby, I helped him. That's it. You oversimplify, began one of the delegates. Marcus cut him off. Do I? Let me ask you something. Empress Oralith said you contacted 13 human colonies looking for Stellar. Not one offered help. But I guarantee you that if any of you had found him first and just acted with basic kindness, the same thing would have happened. Stellar chirped agreement and nuzzled against Marcus's chest. The Royal Awakening isn't about being human, Marcus continued. It's about being decent. It's about seeing someone in need and helping them without thinking about what you might get in return. Ambassador Thessarian's energy form flickered. But surely the cultural and biological factors are irrelevant, Empress Oralith interrupted, speaking for the first time since the formal presentations had begun. The human speaks truth. Royal awakenings are not granted for cleverness or strength or even compatibility. They are granted for purity of intent. She gestured toward her offspring, who was now making happy, chittering sounds as Marcus scratched behind his tiny horns. My son was dying when this human found him. Marcus Chen had never seen our species before, had no knowledge of our importance or power. He saw only a creature in need, and he gave everything he had to help. Chancellor Nexus studied Marcus with ancient eyes. And what do you want in return for this simple act of kindness? Marcus smiled. I want everyone to leave us alone so I can finish raising him properly. The silence that followed was deafening. Dozens of the most powerful beings in the galaxy stared at Marcus as if he'd spoken in an alien language. You refuse all offers of advancement for your species? Chancellor Nexus asked slowly. I'm not refusing anything for humanity, Marcus said. I'm just saying that's not my choice to make. I'm a hermit cultivator who wanted a quiet life. I found a baby who needed help, and now that baby is part of my family. That's where my story ends. Stellar looked up at Marcus and made a complex series of sounds. Empress Oralith translated. He says you are wise beyond your years, and that he chooses to remain with his soul-bonded guardian. But the implications for interspecies relations, began High Commander Zex, will develop naturally or not at all, Marcus said firmly. You want to know the secret of human-dragon bonding? Stop trying to turn it into a diplomatic tool. When humans are ready for galactic society, they'll earn their place the same way every other species has, by proving they deserve it. Marcus stood up, still holding Stellar, and looked around at all the assembled representatives. I appreciate the offers, I really do, but I think this meeting is over. Stellar needs his dinner, and I have plants to tend. The audacity of dismissing the most powerful beings in the galaxy should have caused an incident. Instead, something remarkable happened. Chancellor Nexus began to laugh, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Extraordinary, the ancient being said. Truly extraordinary. In 1,000,000 years of galactic politics, no one has ever told us that a baby's feeding schedule takes precedence over cosmic diplomacy. Empress Oralith stepped forward. Chancellor, if I may make a formal request? Of course, Your Majesty. I propose that this world be declared a protected cultural site under Galactic Covenant 775. No political interference, no economic exploitation. Let this human raise my son in peace, and let them both develop naturally. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude toward the Dragon Empress. She understood what he was trying to preserve. Chancellor Nexus nodded slowly. An elegant solution. Marcus Chen, your world and your homestead are hereby protected under the highest level of galactic law. No one may interfere with your chosen life. As the various delegations began to depart, their ships rising into the afternoon sky like departing birds, Marcus found himself alone with Empress Oralith and a small contingent of dragon guards. You could have had anything. the Empress said quietly. Your species could have jumped forward 10,000 years in a single day. Marcus shifted Stellar to one arm and picked up a watering can with the other. His phoenix fruit trees were already sprouting new buds, enhanced by the dragon's gratitude. Maybe, Marcus said as he began watering his plants. But then it wouldn't have been earned. Humans need to make their own path to the stars. When we're ready, we'll get there. Stellar chirped and pointed a tiny claw at a cluster of flowers that was beginning to bloom. Besides, Marcus added with a smile, I think I'm going to be pretty busy for the next few decades. Someone needs to teach this little guy how to be a proper dragon. Empress Aurelith watched her son contentedly helping Marcus tend to his garden. The baby dragon was already showing signs of inherited power. Flowers bloomed brighter where he touched them, and the spiritual energy of the homestead had stabilized at levels that would take human cultivators centuries to achieve. You realize, she said, that by the time my son reaches adulthood, humanity will have a voice on the Dragon Council itself. His bond with you makes you family, and family has political rights. Marcus paused in his watering. Does that mean what I think it means? It means, Empress Aurelith said with obvious amusement, that in about 50 years, the Galactic Council is going to discover that humans have quietly become one of the most politically connected species in known space, all because one of them was kind to a lost child. As if understanding the conversation, Stellar chirped happily and breathed a tiny puff of golden flame that turned a withered flower into a brilliant crystal bloom. Marcus laughed and scratched the baby dragon under the chin. Well, little prince, looks like we're going to have some interesting times ahead. The sun set over the valley, painting the crystal formations in shades of rose and gold. In the distance, the last of the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying word of humanity's potential to every corner of the galaxy. But in the quiet homestead, a human cultivator and a baby dragon simply enjoyed their evening routine, tending plants and sharing simple meals. Neither of them was particularly concerned about cosmic implications. They had found family in each other, and that was enough to change the universe. As night fell, Stellar curled up on Marcus's chest just as he had that first night. The dragon's contented purring harmonized with the gentle chiming of the crystal formations, creating a lullaby that would soothe them both to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new growth. But tonight, a father and son, united not by blood but by choice, rested peacefully under alien stars, knowing that the greatest power in the universe wasn't technology or politics or even magic. It was simply the decision to care for someone who needed help without asking for anything in return.